Thinkers, in the earliest episodes, I used to ask the same kind of questions to all the CMOs. It was a habit that I got into, and I stopped doing it because it sort of got repetitive and it got a little boring. But one of the questions that always almost made me laugh when I asked the CMOs this question, I say, what do you attribute your success to? Or, what's your proudest moment? And I'm telling you, like, there was a period of time where 9 out of 10 CMOs would say, oh, it's all about my team. It's really this team. It's a team effort. I have a great team. I could never do this alone. And I love that self-effacing notion. It's a very sweet answer. And sometimes I think it actually was truthful. But it's interesting to me because we think about marketing and CMOs and successful CMOs these days, and they have moved light years ahead when it comes to marketing automation and the use of technology and their ability to create attribution models in all sorts of ways. But when you think about hiring and building a team, if I ask 9 out of 10 CMOs, are they doing it any differently than they did 10 years ago? They say, well, yeah, we'll use a filter to search for resumes kind of thing. But the actual process of choosing an individual to be on the team, for the most part, as far as I can see, has not changed, even in a lot of these very slick companies out, Silicon Valley companies. And I'm going to argue right now that this is really important because not only do you have the challenges of building a remote team, which means you don't even get the physical interaction with that individual, and you have the challenge of building a diverse team, which also would be nice if you could do that in person. You've got more challenges than ever. And I'm going to throw in a third that you may say, and that doesn't apply. The third is, let's say unemployment has gone up and it is a down economy for the moment, and you have more options to choose from. So you would think, oh, that means it's going to be easier to hire. I'm going to argue it's harder because you have to sort through even more. So this show, we're going to talk about hiring. We're going to talk about new ways of hiring and bringing some of the same science and artificial intelligence to that process that you have already brought to marketing automation. And then we'll also talk about how do you market that? How do you market a new technology to a group of people who've been doing business the same way since time immemorial? So to do that, my guest today is Caroline Tien-Spalding. Caroline is a native of France, and after studying at Berkeley, settled into Silicon Valley, working at a wide range of companies in an equally wide range of positions. She was the head of marketing for Smug Mug. She was a GM for ArcSoft and the head of product and marketing for a division of Intel. So now, after being CMO in residence at a venture fund called Symphony AI, Caroline joined Aptology, where she's been since May 2019. So, bonjour, Caroline. Welcome to the show.
Bonjour.
Bonjour. Ça va?
Ça va.
Ça va.
Ça fait aller. As the French would say, ça fait aller. We make go.
We make go. Okay. Well, we may go on this show too. I got to tell you. Anyway, welcome to the show. And, it's a crazy time in our world. And so we're going to just we're just going to jump right into what attracted you to, because you've worked at so many interesting companies, what attracted you to the challenge at Aptology?
Well, I'll go back to your introduction, which is about the people. The thread throughout was success and failure hinged on the people in the company by a large degree. I think you get the response 9 out of 10 times. Yeah, there's some truth to it. And I wanted to change what you described as challenges. How do you find people in different environments? How do you find the right people? How do you find it as a good fit? I wanted to change that challenge into an opportunity. It was so common. And so that's what got me to Adaptology.
So, and explain a little bit, and that makes sense. So we all agree that as a CMO, that if we don't have a great team, we're going to have
Toast.
a problem doing great marketing. We agree with that. And we probably even know, we might agree on what roles we need underneath us. But filling those roles, particularly if you're at a fast growth company where you've got to hire a lot of people and you got to do it quickly, is a challenge. And I'm curious, How does Aptology help, and what role do you all play in this process? Explain a little bit about that.
So one of the things that drew me to Eptology was seeing very similar trends across very different pieces of my life. So from as a consumer, I saw a rise in behavioral targeting. It's not about what you look like or what your age group is or where you live. It's about what you do. And based on that, you can get much more relevant product market fit, finding new products that you love. And as a marketer, on the flip side, advertising from a behavioral standpoint makes so much more sense. An example I used to give to my team was, I don't look like a sailor. I curse like one. Maybe that's the telltale. But if you went to the marina, you would find me there because I used to race quite a bit. And so if you find it based on the behavior, right, you could argue the cursing or the going to the marina, you would be able to find me to sell me selling gear. That actually crossed over in many different areas in our consumer life when you think about it, including in the most intimate parts of our life. Match and all these services use behavioral matching in order to make the right match that's probably one of the most important in your lives. And so it's surprising to see that the tools available, that you have in MarTech were not available on the people side when we've all established now that behavioral match. So match is a keyword here. The behavioral match is a key performance indicator of success.
So behavioral match, and I think everybody, and I'm so glad you brought that analogy. We all understand what match does, how it works, and sort of identifying these characteristics of the individual and then matching them with another individual, right? And sort of we're looking for a key and a lock kind of a situation. How does that work for when you're hiring? And how, so let's just start there.
Yeah, it's interesting. So it works in hiring, but it also works inside the company. So how does it work? You need two pieces of the puzzle for this to work. And the analogy I used to think of was, a fish in the water versus out of the water. If it doesn't work out of the water, it might not be the fish, right? It might be the environment. And certainly that seemed to be the case in different companies where I was employed. Whereas a leader, it was very difficult to hire consistently and at scale. And even when I was trying to help some mentees or employees transfer between different roles, it was really difficult to understand. And so people have resorted to, I interviewed, I don't know, 4 recruiters, internal and external. And these people are amazing. They deal with volume, they deal with human psychology. They're trying to extract out of managers who most of the time only have one or two hires. They try to extract from them does it really take to be successful in this role you're going to hire, and then translate that into a bunch of different documents. They have Word docs, they have Excel spreadsheets, they have these massive Sherlock Holmes brains, right? And they translate that into Boolean searches to try to go and find it and then make the match. I think it's a hero's journey to be a recruiter, honestly, against the odds. So many have they're still bleeding from their battle scars. And so what if we could see past the keywords? Keywords are very limiting. What if we could get past that and see the behaviors? What if you could find happiness at work and know that you're going into an environment that is favorable to you, right? There's a really amazing saying that said, they try to bury us, little did they know that we were seeds. So very much like that, where do you put the seed?
And as you're talking about that, a million different thoughts are racing through my mind. And we're focused on the hiring part, in the recruiter doing the keywords. So how does your system actually, are you replacing the recruiter? Is this something that the recruiter uses? Is it HR? How does it, give us a little sort of a specific example of finding this match?
Yeah, no, I don't think we can replace the recruiters. I would never be that ambitious. Oh my goodness. Or HR really. No, it's assisted intelligence is what we call it, which is the ability to help you do more because you're restricted, right, in time that you have space. And so how do you get information in MarTech, right? It'll be all the intent analytics that you see or other analytics tools. So it's the ability to give you visibility where it's really difficult to go and find that. And certainly, there were companies that hired, IO psychologists on staff and made sure that they asked the behavioral questions to try to get an understanding of the candidate. That not most of us can't afford that. And you would also require to be able to do that for the role for that company. And so one thing that we've seen pretty consistently is that for same title, same industry, same size of company, you go from one company to the next, and what is required to be successful in a role may be really different. One of my favorite case studies was this company in medical devices that used to hire in sales and enterprise sales, the outspoken person, pretty much me, you would think, super talkative, knows everybody by first name, the person that you imagine going into a party and shaking everyone's hand and laughing super loud. I'm stereotyping a little bit, but they were really looking for that outgoing, which in an interview is a really great battleground to go and find that out. Only problem is once they started understanding who was really successful at scale in their large company, in the enterprise world, the people who were balancing listening and talking did 30% better. That is no small sway.
Right.
And so they actually had people in different groups. And in sales, we see quite a bit of evolution, very much like in marketing. Well, you'll have in sales, it'll be inside sales and then field sales, and then you'll move to SMB, small businesses, and then enterprise. And the problem is what is required to be successful in one might actually be your undoing in the other. I think we've seen that in quite a few roles across the company. It's not unique to sales or marketing. It's the what got you here will not get you there problem. And so how do you find these pathways, and without the ability to see behavior, do it consistently, do it at scale, understand what success looks like for a role in your company. I mean, that's why people don't really do it now, because it's really difficult to do manually.
And so there was one keyword that I picked up on, which is assisted intelligence.
Yeah.
And I want that is so profound. A lot of people, when they hear AI and bots and any computer kinds of things, they get very afraid. And to me, I can draw a through line in so many different interviews. Like I had the CEO of Pega, and he talked about using their system to help agents with the next best action. So
That's
it
right.
wasn't replacing, it was assisted intelligence. And I can think of several other cases where artificial intelligence is really good at sorting through data and finding patterns and doing it quicker. And in fact, we're going to do a show on LinkedIn Live about conversational AI, and it's going to be a similar kind of a thing. Anyway, I should correct that. We've already done a show. This is in the future, and then it's in the past. So this is a mess. This is this is a good time to take a break. I'll be right back. Okay, we're back, and we're talking about this notion of assisted intelligence, and we all want to hire better. There's no doubt. I mean, if you could, and you were talking about, it's funny, I would argue that listening is always important, and we've talked about that on the show at length, and in almost any role, because listening equals empathy, and empathy usually can lead to sales. In fact, you turned me on to a book that talks about that quite a bit. What is it? Never negotiate.
Never split the difference.
Never
Chris
split
Voss.
the difference, right?
If you're listening, Chris, one day I want to have lunch with you.
Yeah, there you go. So anyway, because I had heard about the book before, but because of you, I'm listening to it right now. But it's amazing how these FBI negotiators just inherently knew how important empathy was, and that starts by listening. Okay, way off topic, but not completely.
Great point. So if you're listening now, I encourage you to pick up this book, and it's so well written, and it starts with, how did the FBI terrorist negotiation team make a breakthrough in saving lives? I mean, who wouldn't want to open that book?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. And I think it applies to everything that you and I do for a living. But so we've talked in general about helping companies hire better by essentially matching better, right? So we talked about that if we can find the right person to fit into the right company, because there's both the role, what's expected, the culture, all those things are variables. What I'm still not quite sure of, and I bet the listeners, is what exactly does your product do to facilitate this process?
So we help you understand behavior at work. So it's not behavior with your parents or in a stressful environment. It's unless your work is a stressful environment, which it might be for most people these days. But in the context you're in, what are the behaviors? And so it's almost starts, there's 3 levels of engagement. The first one is help your team understand themselves, create a way to have better dialogue about work and what your strengths are and what your weaknesses. And it used to be a very famous question, right? What are your weaknesses? Where are your strengths? And it became an exercise in gymnastics, right?
Yes.
Oh, this is a strength in certain contexts, but a weakness in others. That's the truth. And so what was never completed is what kind of environment are you that will either make this a strength or a weakness? So that's what we help uncover. You have a 15-minute survey that we've worked with a very prestigious English university on, adverse impact tested, because you want to ensure that you're really looking for the behavior and not the level of language or proficiency in certain technical words. We're only focusing on behavior. How do you communicate? What is your communication style preferences in a team environment? How do you make decisions? How do you react to stress? Those are some of the questions without, surprising people in interviews and opening the door and yelling at them, which some companies do and would not recommend. Can you find the answer to these questions and start having this dialogue? That's one piece. The second one is answering, what does it take to be successful in this role, in this company right now? And how does it change over time? I think there was an attempt and multiple attempts to doing this that we should celebrate. The right idea was there, trying to understand, okay, what does it take to be successful in the role? The problem is a lot of them have data that's 30, 40 years old. And today's company is not the same as the company 30, 40 years ago. I think we can all agree lots of things have changed. And so we need to have data refresh. It's like building your marketing on 40-year-old data, or your sales plan on 40-year-old data, or product on 40-year-old data. The first portable computer was in 1981 and weighed 23 pounds. We're no longer there. You now have the internet in your pocket on the size of the palm of your hand. And so the other tools that you use should reflect that reality. And then thirdly, there's what are the best possible matches and progression, and how do you look at that at scale? And the larger company you are, the more this is an incredible challenge, because you may be able to attract great talent, but without the ability to facilitate career pathing, they're going to career path themselves out with your competitor who has more information about them than you do. And so I think it's aligning interest of people wanting to understand how to be their best at work. I mean, no one shows up to fail. That was a great quote from Chris Kowaleski of Compass Group, an amazing mentor, a great leader, really big advocate of, really looking at and understanding people at work. And that's his philosophy. No one shows up at work to fail. So how do you enable success? And if you don't understand behavior, and if they don't understand it, or if you have very different levels of understanding, right? Like, oh, Drew, I think you're blah, blah, blah. And then you get to another manager and a completely different interpretation of you shows up. Then you're not going to be happy. You're going to be confused. So how do we align that? How do we make sure you understand yourself at work? How do we put you in the best possible position to succeed? And how do we do that at scale? That's what we do.
I think I get it. And I do. And I mean, I get the why you need to do it. And I get the sort of the outcome. I'm not sure I get the how, but I don't think I really even necessarily need to. The outcome is not just better hiring decisions so that we have a better match, but also there's some part of this that continues along with the employee to make sure that this alignment that the match stays good. I
That's
guess.
right.
And
That's
that
right.
part
So we
I don't,
understand your behavior and then the
right?
behavior of different roles, and then we help that match and that specific coaching. So let's talk about coaching for a second. So we've understood the behaviors and performance. At a high level, this is not rocket science. It's just really difficult to do if you don't have the right tool to do it, like analytics in marketing. You could do it in Excel spreadsheet. It would just take you a very long time. So you could understand behavior first, capture that consistently and at scale, and make sure it's adverse impact tested. And then you compare it to objective performance metric. Without that, you're in a world of pain, of bias all day long. And then once you have multiple roles, you can coach specifically. So one of the issues that we see with women in particular is that they get coached on things that actually don't move the needle quite a bit. And our system has seen that quite a bit. So in sales, for example, let's say you have balance of listening and talking, you could get that feedback that you're really strong at it, or here are some tweaks in exactly the wording that you could use. You could slow down, you could breathe. And that would have an impact on performance. But you could also get coached on exactly, how you get along, or how you react to stress, or if you're very assertive in the way that you bring a point through. And what we've seen is that they could be cultural norms in the team or things that are accepted in behaviors, but they actually do not move the needle on behavior. On performance. It doesn't move the needle on performance. And so we're separating, hey, here's a look at what really seems to be moving the needle. You might want everybody to focus on that first. And then here are the things that are normative to the group, but don't necessarily actually move the needle on performance. So if you have to prioritize your one-on-ones, your coaching, or you're spending your effort on trying to improve, that category of the behaviors that really move the needle is a great North Star. And specifically, we tell you what it sounds like when you're slightly off, so that it's much more specific feedback to make an impact.
So, excuse me, if I put this in a marketer's terms, as a company, I'm marketing my brand to get potential employees to join my brand. And I want them to thrive there. And so I have tools that make sure that I get the right people into the company in the first place, just as we should be getting the right customers into our business, because it's those bad customers that can really create all sorts of problems for you. So we want to get the right people, and then we want to nurture them in a way like we would a customer experience, right? So that they have the best experience they can with the company. So I can find the parallel, but now when I turn around and say, okay, this is a marketing show, most of the companies that I'm imagining that you're marketing to are doing it the old way. I'm just guessing. You're not replacing another technology. You're replacing a way of doing business. And that's the hardest thing in marketing, is you are selling change, right?
Yeah.
And I'm curious how, let's make the pivot there to what is the elevator pitch for Aptology, and how do we first talk about this? And is there, for example, would CMOs ever be in the target audience for you all?
We actually ended up with some in our lap unintentionally. So where we started was with our North Star was objective metrics, right? And so we started with sales because you have quota attainment, you have revenue, you have pipeline. And so the results of what we've found out together really makes an impact extremely quickly. Within a quarter, you see the pipeline improvement. And what was interesting is that we started getting really pulled in to other pieces of the organization because, as I said, it's a phased project or a phased development in that you first help people understand themselves at work, and then the role, and then the match. And so the other parts of the organization were like, wait, you know this about yourself. Why don't I know this about myself? And I want to be able to have that dialogue. And I've always wondered why I was getting coached on this area, but not this area. And so we started getting pulled into customer service, into even engineering, into marketing. And in marketing, you could argue that there's a separate discussion here on the rise of the revenue driving CMO. Right. And so we're definitely getting even more pulled in here. And with the rise of remote work, the ability to have really good coaching and understanding of yourself at work has become extremely critical to the business and its success.
Yeah, and I want to come back to that because I think that's a really interesting thing. The light bulb went off for me for a second when you said this, which is we can see a dramatic improvement in the sales performance of the salespeople as a result of sort of creating objective ways of evaluating and both hiring and sort of training or whatever you want to coaching, right? And I think there isn't a company in America that wouldn't want its salespeople to stay longer, to perform better, right?
Or salespeople who want to make more commission, right?
Right. And so they want this. So it's the alignment for what are and particularly interesting to me now, where for companies that aren't performing as well as they want, the number of companies where salespeople are making quota, I think it's higher than 25, maybe even 30 to 35% of salespeople aren't making quota right now.
Oh, it's more. We found it's between 30 and 43% of people make quota.
Okay, it's the other way around.
It's the other way around.
So in your research, because it's, and part of mine is one-to-one CMOs who will just share that information with me. So, okay, so 60% roughly of companies, salespeople are not making quota. Now, there's economic reasons, there's positioning reasons, there's all sorts of reasons, but one would argue that your product pays for itself when you can go to a place easily that can do it. Okay, I get it. That really helps me.
And what's really interesting, right? You talked about MarTech. There's a lot of sales tech to try to get all the symptoms. So you have CRMs and some of these systems have become their own hydras for sales teams and sales operations. It's given rise to sales operations. But you have pipeline review, you even have call recording, you have email activity, you have cold outreach email tools that give you better insights if you share a video, what percentage and who it was. But all these are symptoms of it doesn't qualify exactly the how throughout. A really interesting stat posted by Clary, I believe, was that it takes 19 meetings to score a $100,000 deal on average. And so if you don't have follow-up, right, just this very simple thing, if you don't have the resilience and the discipline and the attention to detail to follow up throughout those 19 meetings, that's a lot of opportunities to fail. And so, you were talking about like the funnel and marketers. I think there's the rise of talent optimization. You have funnel optimization, you have sales revenue optimization and revenue intelligence, but you don't have revenue intelligence unless you have people intelligence. And so you've got this talent optimization or people intelligence that's really rising right now, because without that leg of the stool, you're just kind of going and looking at symptoms, right? You just keep, the patient's hemorrhaging and you're putting Band-Aids on it.
Right. And what's interesting, we're going to take a quick break, but what's interesting to me is, the old school situation was marketing would bring the lead, hand it off, and then they'd be pissed off that sales couldn't do it. If I'm a marketer right now and I have this situation, I want your product in there because then I can make sure that these folks are performing and my leads will actually be delivered upon. All right, we're going to take a break and we'll be right back. Okay, we're back. And we've been talking about an area that we haven't talked about on this show, which is sort of the critical importance, obviously, of people in all these organizations. And you CMOs listening, you all know how important it is to have your team perform. But you are only as good as your salespeople's team too, which is an interesting thing. But I'm curious now, let's switch gears. Let's put on your CMO hat and let's talk about how have you marketed and what interesting things have you done to get Aptology, which again, you're not only selling a category, but you got to get people convinced that you are the right one to do it. So what approach has been working for you?
So I've taken a little bit of a different approach. As you said, I've worn different hats myself. And one thing that I've kept with me, there was a book that made a really big influence on me, except for Never Split the Difference, which was the book of this year. But another really good framework is Jobs to Be Done, which I used in product management. And it's a discipline to extract out of prospect interviews what is really going on. And there's this very famous example that's used in incubators quite a bit. That's fantastic on interviewing people, and it shows the difference between asking, "What do you typically eat?" which is the equivalent of in jobs, right? What do you typically do as a marketer? The job description answer is what you're going to get, versus what did you eat last night? Mm-hmm. What did you eat for lunch yesterday? And it's the difference between the perceived or ideal self and the actual self. And what you want to do in product management and in marketing is go for the actual, because that's where the pains are and that's where the value truly is. And there's a booming, dieting industry, especially, with us all at home right now. So there is a will to be better, but understanding exactly what truly prevents you from reaching that ideal state is foundational. So the why you're not able to achieve what you would love to be or to be doing. And using that method, I reached out to complete strangers, and I'm going to call out a few of them right now. Amazing CROs, the CRO of User Testing, David, amazing. The CRO of Compass Group USA, Chris Koleski, whom I just mentioned. I'm a big fan. The former CRO of Intuit has been fantastic. People who didn't know me at all, that I reached out and said, hey, I'm working on this new category and it's selling to sales. And I see that I have a bunch of CRO customers, but let's be real. Even though I made 105 calls a day when I started, I'm not a CRO. I don't actually know, other than being accused of killing my MQLs, I don't really know what you do all day. I mean, do you just throw darts at them to kill them? Do you just like let them die on the vine? What's your preferred method of killing my MQLs, right? And, they laugh a little bit. And then they share what their pain truly is about. And I was like, I need to understand, you get pitched. CMOs get pitched all day. I'm sure CROs get pitched all day. What in your words, right? Like, where's your pain? What was your problem yesterday? And not really leading the witness like I just did, but like, give me, like, what did you do yesterday? What did you do the day before? And you have these leaders who truly, in their heart of hearts, believe it's about the people. I mean, the experienced CROs out there, Steve from Sumo Logic, another amazing person who gave me time out of nowhere right after their IPO, no less, to give me feedback on messaging, on like, and the CRO of Intuit said it amazingly as well, who was, don't just do it so that people understand, but so that people don't misunderstand what you do. And helping me translate that into their language and how they experience the pain has been instrumental at every point of the funnel. So we have a new sales section on the website that's thanks to all these amazing people. Our sales materials have gone through that. Chris Koleski actually reviewed an entire brochure on people intelligence and gave me some like rough love, amazing feedback that I needed because it sounded too marketing-y, and you need that external view. And so that product management process has been an integral part of how we go to market.
So you've essentially built an advisory board.
Yes.
And I'm really curious, what's in it for them?
I sometimes wonder, and I think these are people who are giving it forward. I like there's no exchange of money. It's a one-way time. I mean, I try to be valuable and offer advice where I can in marketing or other areas, and patching, the love where it's missing between marketing and sales. But I think they truly believe in just trying to help other people. And I'm just lucky enough that they chose that I was worth their time. And for that, I'm extremely, extremely, extremely grateful. Thank you.
Well, there is somewhat of an irony here, is that you are selling a technology to help people hire and coach and manage people better. And your solution to marketing it was as basically people as can be.
Yes, yes.
And
It's true.
so I think, right, I mean, because you were looking for genuine insights that only an experienced individual, this was not a scalable, researchable thing necessarily. So that's fascinating. So this advisory board that I'm calling it, that you built to help, so that's driven your content program, that's driven, and how are you pushing that forward from here, on? You've got that group, they've advised you, and how do you see that moving forward?
I mean, an extremely important part of product management and marketing is closing the feedback loop. That's the other thing I'm really about. And what our product is about? It's about closing the feedback loop. You coach somebody. Did it actually make a difference on the performance, right? That's the other piece that's often missing. And so closing the feedback loop is something I'm passionate about and is really difficult to do at scale. But as I said, just launched the website that really included all of that feedback, continuing to seek feedback on that same content. Is it explaining everything correctly? Is it explaining it in the right order, in the right way? We issued new brochures and new sales materials to our team. And we're evolving actually the demo to talk more specifically about certain items. There's also amazing women who have helped me understand specific subsegments of sales. So Siobhan Thatcher at Rig Central is amazing. Brooke Bechesta at Outreach on the role of SDRs. And SDR is an interesting subcategory in sales because sometimes it can be owned by marketing and sometimes it can be owned by sales. And the pressures are slightly different. But the approach of developing people is core to it because these people will often graduate to sales. And the companies that do it really well, interesting nugget right here, the average tenure in the SDR world is about 13 to 15 months. But the the path to promo is usually 90% of the case is to account executive AE, and that happens in 15 to 18 months. And so what ends up happening is that if you don't have a career pathing possibility within your company, you're training your competition's AE.
There you go. That's
Which
hilarious.
is incredible, right? And so the best companies have figured out a way to career path in AE or otherwise. There are paths in marketing, for example, especially as the marketing department starts owning it. But it's really interesting to see the actual understanding of the people side and the right evolution that successful companies like Ring Central and Outreach have had in that department.
So just in case my father or someone else is listening and they want to know what MQL is, it's Marketing Qualified Lead. It's a scoring technique that marketers use before, and if it matches a certain criteria, then they hand it off to sales. And SDR is a sales development rep. These are people who would manage leads and depends on the company. Some are called brand development reps or business development reps, BDRs, right? And anyway, okay. So let's wrap this up by first talking about hiring better. So if we want to give CMOs 3 tips on hiring better, let's go there.
With or without Aptology? I mean, that would be my tip number 1 if you can afford it.
Let's assume, I guess with Aptology, why not?
Well, so no matter what you use, because I think this is a problem so deep, so impactful that I just want people to solve it no matter how they solve it. The keystone is first understanding what it means to be successful in this role in this company. And you'll have there, a bifurcation. You'll have people who have had people in the role before and can tell you what doesn't work. But hopefully you can get to a state where you can more specifically discuss the behaviors that make someone successful. The issues are there's all kinds of biases in trying to make that interpretation, by yourself at home. And there are people who are just building new teams, nascent teams. The baby teams, it gets a lot harder. And especially if you're in hyper growth phase, the needs may be changing over time. And so on that, I would just keep it as your North Star to always think about what does it take to be successful, and then matching based on that versus, have you done this before? Or our world is changing so quickly, right? The iPhone came out in 2007 and changed, at least 30% of our traffic and conversions, if not more. Yeah, that's a huge chunk, right? 13 years ago. So what you did, yesterday is not necessarily what will make you successful tomorrow, but the method by which you do it, that's something that can last. So how do you define what it takes to be successful, and how do you adjust that, and how do you verify that, and how do you close the feedback loop? That's the big piece. The second one I would encourage marketers to do is there's a world of untapped potential. And the reason for that is the restriction on keywords. Why is it that people, hire people they know? It's because they're de-risked, right? The devil So how do you de-risk someone you don't know so that you can open the floodgates of possibilities? And I would say really, become a student of behavior at work if you can. We can't all be psychologists, but we can try to educate ourselves the way we did in MarTech, right? We've learned all this incredible stack of 5,000 options and counting, probably 15 by the time we're talking, right? Because it changes every month. But if we're able to learn all of that, we can definitely invest in learning in people and finding people, not just based on the usual keywords. And I'll just double click on that in a second. Keywords are really difficult because it's how we find things, but the way you describe what you've achieved and the way I describe what I've achieved are different. Doesn't mean we haven't, gotten those achievements. But if we are limited to the way you describe it or the way I describe it, there's an entire pool of people we're going to be missing. And so I would really try to like think in terms of synonyms and try to crack. That's why recruiters are amazing, right? Like they're transforming all this stuff into billion searches, but really opening past the usual colleges or the usual I've done this way, said specific in this specific way on the resume is something that I would be, encouraging marketers to do. I think the behavior is, an HBR article highlighted that it's the most high performing indicator. So meaning like if you had to take a guess of all the things that are predictive of your performance, what's the one thing that moves the needle the most? It's behavior. So look for that. And the third one is, I think there's a lot of aspiring leaders, or they're trying to get themselves to be better as leaders. And I've worked for some really amazing leaders, and I've read a lot of leadership books. I mean, that doesn't make me an expert, but a common trait is the ability to really understand what causes certain behaviors to flare or not. And a great example, like the dieting example, what I would like to eat versus what I ate last night. If you end up with a lot of people who say yes around you, start asking yourself what happened the last time someone disagreed. What happened the last time that someone spoke up? What happened the last time that someone took initiative, right? And every time you start and like ask the question this way, you'll get a better understanding of your actual culture versus your ideal culture. And just taking a look at that and making tweaks. I think Elias Torres, who's a co-founder of Drift, I really love him. Known him for a long time, and I've been a very outspoken beta user of every product he's built. I'm sure he'll laugh listening to this. But that was one of the things that we discussed was, did you ask last time what happened when someone disagreed? What happened last time versus, like, does it make sense? What do you think about this? When you're in a position of power, people have too much at stake in saying no. And so you have to be a very self-conscious in asking specifically for that contrarian point of view. And I think that's a really difficult balance, but something that is a discipline that we can make happen and will result in more diverse points of view. If you open the gates to diverse feedback, you will then see like blind spots that you weren't aware of, or new possibilities or opportunities for business. I've been inspired by the teams that I've had the privilege of supporting. I call it supporting versus leading, because you ask, what else did I think of? Like, what did we not consider? And all of a sudden you have this flood of ideas and you're like, oh my goodness, I would have been missing out on all of this, right? So these are the three things that I would consider.
Awesome. That's amazing. Okay. Well, we're out of time, mainly because speaking of behavior, folks are commuting much less. And so they just they're not running long enough to finish these episodes. So I'm going to just stop right here. And thank you so much for being on the show. It's been amazing having you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And to all the listeners, I hope you got a lot out of the show. We're taking notes. We'll link to a lot of the people that she mentioned. I've referenced Jobs to Be Done, which Clayton Christensen and another gentleman wrote in past shows with Brent Adamson. Big fan of that approach. And if you did enjoy it, share with a friend. Sharing is caring. Okay. Renegade Thinkers Unite is written and directed by Drew Neisser. Hey, that's me. Audio production is by Sam Beck. Show notes are written by Melissa Caffrey. The music is by the amazing Burns Twists, and the intro voiceover is Linda Cornelius. To find the transcripts of all episodes, suggest future guests, or learn more about quite possibly the savviest B2B marketing agency in New York City, visit renegade.com. And until next time, keep those renegade thinking caps on and strong.